Welcome to the SMC Journal podcast, the show that's all about performance engineering in IT today. I am DevOps. I am Scott Moore, your host. We will be talking about performance engineering topics today. Thank you. Hey, welcome to the show today. Well, thank you for being with me. I know you're curious about this, and George is back here wearing one of these hats. He's still George because nobody's named him yet, so come on. These are the official hats from the Devo Fan Club website. And these are very expensive for what you get. We tried to make these with 3D printers, didn't go so well. We ended up having to buy the official ones. And then you have to actually buy this construction hat insert and tape it in with duct tape. There's a procedure that's outlined on the website to do this. And if you don't know what this is all about, first of all, for those of you born in an era that you didn't know who Devo was, the band Devo from the 80s, and you don't know how awesome they are, well, you're just missing out. You need to go look it up. Google it. Devo was a great new wave synth style band that was from the 80s that did really quirky videos. And if you don't know why I'm referencing all this, the Performance Tour episode 11 this year, the November episode, had a parody of a Devo song called Whip It. We renamed it to Test It. And Devo is so close to DevOps. There was a video back in the 80s that they did where they had these yellow outfits and they had DEVO written in these black letters. So we just added DevOps to ours when we redid the video. I just thought it was really cool. If you haven't seen it, please watch the video. We just released the standalone parody song, Test It. And so we have the costumes and everything. They're very authentic. And we called that DevOps. Even though we're talking about testing, it was just too good to pass up on a play on words. So that was the reference today. Not just being weird for the sake of being weird. DevOps, we're going to be talking more about that. SREs, reliability, observability, chaos. We're going to be talking about some additional topics where performance engineering is kind of breaking out in and being discussed in more areas. It's crossing over into more areas. That's kind of the topic for today. We're actually going to be reviewing the 2023 SRE report that Catchpoint and Blameless released just a few weeks ago. I've actually been wanting to talk about this for over 2 weeks, but I had shows queued up. But now here in December, we're able to talk about it. And before we do that, let's talk about the sponsors that make this podcast happen. And let's see that now. This episode is sponsored by Micro Focus and the LoadRunner Solutions family. That includes LoadRunner Professional, Enterprise, Cloud, and Developer. You know, performance matters. Did you know that LoadRunner Solutions have the largest community of practitioners in the world? Join that community at community.microfocus.com, scan the QR code, and check out the LoadRunner family page on performance engineering, as well as their YouTube playlist that we've got links for in the show notes on smcjournal.com as well as YouTube. This episode is sponsored by PFLB, a provider of premier load and performance testing services for enterprises in all industries. They focus on a robust methodology, tools, and experienced engineers. Since 2008, they've built a reputation for reliability worldwide. BoomQ is their own innovative performance testing solution, and they consult around industry standard tools like JMeter, LoadRunner, Grafana, and more. Find out more at pflb.us. This episode is sponsored by Supervisor. Stop losing money with a slow website. With Supervisor, you can continuously track the performance of your code and your hosting. Predict site page load speed with high user volumes and an easy one-click load test solution. Find out more at supervisor.com. Thank you so much, sponsors, for your support of this podcast as well as the performance community as a whole. Let's take a look at this SRE report that came out about site reliability and resiliency from Catchpoint. This is probably, I think, the third annual one that they released. I remember when we first started the performance tour for year ending 2019 into 2020. That was the first year I remember it coming out. And then Catchpoint has been producing a newer version each year, updating it on trends that they're seeing within site reliability engineering. Remember, Catchpoint is an end user or digital end user experience monitoring tool. So it's focused on what the end user actually sees, and they're able to actually see things that happen outside the cloud. So even when the cloud is having problems, Catchpoint is sort of a watcher of the watchers. And they're dealing with SREs every day because the SREs have to pay attention to what's going on with their apps when it comes to reliability and resilience. So site reliability engineers, they're the ones that try to keep this train rolling and the machine running, right? So they are talking about concepts in here that are around that discipline and how site reliability engineering is operating within DevOps culture. And some of the areas it gets into have to do with the culture of work itself, not just about the technical aspects of the job of an SRE. Now, why am I talking about this? Because this is sort of the new landing pad. SRE is the landing pad for a lot of performance engineers. We are seeing that title of performance engineer and performance tester. They're kind of being separated out where you're either in testing, and if you're in testing, you're in development, you're reporting to development, or the developers are doing testing, and then any additional automation for CI/CD pipelines, reducing toil, and other non-functional requirements like performance are being handled by either an SRE in title or somebody in operations. So performance engineering, where those skill sets are landing and the people who actually do that work, it's changing where they live, so to speak. So you will hear me talking more and more about some of these other areas within DevOps, within platform engineering. We're hearing more about that within resilience, and some people have called that chaos, but I think it's more than just chaos. But resilience and reliability testing, all of this is part of efficient, performant software deployment. Um, there's other gray areas out there. What if you don't build software? What if you just implement software for a company? Packaged applications, for example, may or may not be highly tweaked. Different set of requirements for there. What if you're still managing legacy applications? So it's not just a cut and dry, everybody's an SRE now, but I think that it's worth talking about the findings in this report, because on many companies, they are moving to this model, whether the culture even wants it or not. They're moving to it because it's the cool thing to do now. And on this show, we will try to cut through the clutter of where it's smoke and mirrors and what actually really matters. But I'm not going to read this whole report to you. You can download this. You can we'll share the link for where you can go to download a copy of this report. You don't even have to register or fill out a form for it. You just download it. It's a PDF. You can look at it. I'm just going to show you just one page of this. It talks about why you would read this report, and just the highlights page here, that basically these are the main points that come out of this report. It says AI is not replacing human intelligence anytime soon. It should be considered within the larger observability context. We'll get into that in a moment. There is a stark dichotomy between individual practitioners who do the work and executives. So it says that it talks about tool sprawl. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Then you've got elite performing organizations. You've heard me talking about top performing organizations in the past, TPOs. This is their terminology for that. They report a very or extremely blameless culture. We'll talk about what blameless culture is and why elite performing organizations are getting the lion's share value out of SRE role and what they do, and DevOps as a destination overall. And total experience strategies need to be considered within a wider context. It says the reliability focus for external customer-facing products or services eclipses that of internal employer-facing tools or system. In other words, like Catchpoint was built on, you need to be paying attention to what the actual end user sees and what they're experiencing, and you need to understand that. And then the other one is Toil numbers continue to fall. We'll mention that as well. So I want to talk about the top 5 takeaways that I got from this report. I want you to read this report for yourself and come away with whatever value you see out of it. But I'm thinking of it in terms of why do I, as a performance engineer, care about something that's in here? Because you'll hear me on a soapbox a lot talking about the need for specialization when it comes to performance. And SREs typically would not have that specialization. They would be focused on working on code that reduces toil, probably working with the people who are writing test automation cases now if they're totally in development, and also reducing the toil of just business processes and things that make the machine run, and supporting those developers in the that are building the features and functionality. And then also they're working with operations to make sure that they are eliminating the need for war room situations. Then they know when things are going down. They're looking at observability platforms. They're able to find problems before their customers do and avoid really bad situations. And if they can't automate their way out of those repetitive tasks that operations has to deal with every day. So if they're doing that, how much time can they spend focused on just the performance aspect of things? That's a problem for me. And I think whether you call this person an SRE team member that with a performance focus, or you call them something else, there needs to be somebody in an organization that pays attention to performance. Now, you can come back and say, well, performance, like quality and security, is everybody's job. Yes, that's true, but there is a scope limitation wherever you fit in an organization. I don't expect the developer to be focusing on the performance of the network, or not even the database. I would expect a database administrator to be focused on the performance of a database, working in conjunction with the developer who thinks about performance of their code and how it interplays with that database, and how much data is being pulled across that network. So the network engineer or administrator would be working with the developer to let them, to advise them, to say, that feature that you just created is really heavy on the network. You need to be doing some things to eliminate the chattiness, or how much of a network hog it actually is. It takes a team to do that, and each person has their scope and responsibility of what they focus on for performance. And that is why I'm paying attention to a report like this SRE report, but understanding they're messing with areas that used to be a performance tester's role or a performance engineer's role, and that role has kind of disappeared in business today. I think that's actually a problem, and it's even one of my takeaways. So let's go to my takeaways right now. This is the first one: TPO's rule, or top performing organizations. Now, we've seen this from this SRE report, as well as another one that came out from a digital journal earlier that I reported on about observability. The companies that are taking most advantage of observability platforms, mixing it with business context, and are putting an effort towards it, are realizing tremendous value from observability. Same thing is true for site reliability engineers. Those who embrace SREs, the whole golden signal Google handbook, and run it according, and have a business model that matches Google or similar software development firms like that, and are trying to scale it, they are benefiting tremendously from operating this way, especially with a blameless culture, which we'll talk about in a moment. But those organizations who are simply jumping on the SRE train and trying to be part of this new thing, this new bandwagon, just like we saw with Agile, there's an early adoption. There is a huge win by some early adopters who have taken the time to implement right and show off at conferences and other places. Look what we did. It's so great. And then other people try to copycat that, but they try to remove the things that they don't like about it, and they don't keep the discipline that was involved in creating it to begin with. And then they lose some of that magic because of that, and they wonder why they're not as successful with it. Same thing would be true for something like scaled agile framework, SAFe. Those people who fully embraced it and operated according to the rule sets that were made received some tremendous benefit by scaling out agile. Those who just tried to take it on as a new fangled thing that's going to reorganize our company, and everything's just going to be better, we'll learn some new acronyms, it didn't work very well, and now there's this backlash because of that. I think we'll see some of that with the SRE and DevOps community as a whole. We still haven't seen the total part of that, but we will. Trust me. But the point is, the TPOs are getting the most value out of it. And if you're not getting value out of it and you're trying to do it, you need to go back and figure out, well, why are you trying to do it? Is it actually the best business model for? Is DevOps the way that we should operate our company? If you're a company who is 100 to 150 years old, it may not be the best way to run your entire company. And some of these things may require an all or nothing approach, and not just to development and operations, but other areas of your company as well. That could go on for a while. Here's my second takeaway: tool sprawl. This is another thing we've seen from observability reports in the past. There are lots of tools out there. You would think that, hey, we just grab this one, we'll pick best of breed observability package. We'll get everything that we need from our metrics log, traces, events, and other things that we want to grab. We'll put something together to filter out what we don't want to see, and it'll just be easy as pie. Now we've got this single pane of glass that everybody keeps talking about, and yet it never happens. 30% of the tools that are out in enterprises today are homemade tools still. It's stuff that they couldn't get out of even a commercial package that they still need more data from to make good decisions. And because the data is becoming more and more, because it's getting more and more complicated, and there's just a bigger amount of stuff that you have to keep track of, people are hoping that they can use things like AI and machine learning to build sort of an AI ops model to let AI begin to figure some of that stuff out and filter out what you don't need to see, only retain the things that you need to retain to keep storage costs low on logs and the metrics that you need. Time spans need to be filtered out, those type of things. But AI isn't really there yet to help make decisions on what you should do about a problem that's been presented, or if it may notice patterns, it may notice certain trending that happens, but it still takes human intervention to look at that and make sense of it and say, what do we need to do about this? We're going to be talking about that on the Performance Tour December edition, about AI ops specifically, and how far are we along, how mature are we? And I was actually surprised to find we're really not there, and there is a lot of smoke and mirrors on that. And even the name AI ops is very deceiving. It didn't initially mean artificial intelligence operations. It was something else. So not going to spoil that, but tools. There's more tools than ever that are monitoring more things than ever, and that is something where I don't see that. I don't see that being solved. I don't see that as a problem that necessarily needs to be solved. And we need more data. We need more stuff. It's making sense of it is the problem that needs to be solved. And some companies have just taken on the mentality of, we'll go out to the CNCF, we'll pull down what we want, we'll pull down Prometheus, we'll pull down Open Telemetry, and whatever it doesn't have, we'll add to the project, and we'll put stuff on top of it. We'll start being a contributor to these projects, and we'll make them better. And if that opens up the standards for things like, for example, Prometheus, to continue adding on these things that you can monitor in Prometheus and have a standard around how you grab that and display it, I think it's wonderful. If you get all the players involved and you can get everything that you need, and you can add your own code to it to add what you want, I think that's a great thing for IT, and I think we need to see more of that. So totally not against that at all. Third thing, toil reduction. One of the good conclusions out of this report is that there is a reduction in toil being seen. We are starting to see the needle move a little bit with regards to automating things, repetitive tasks in industries. Part of this has to do with SREs like writing their own code to do this. The other thing we've seen is RPA, right? So RPA, I always initially thought, well, RPA is just a QA functional automation tool. Or even how you do a load testing script, and we just remove the timings out of it, because we're still doing the same thing. We're recording and playing back an automation path. But this RPA is obviously so much more than that, where you can open up a Word document, read something from the Word document, copy, and then paste something into some other application and then do something with that, and you're jumping over applications as a user would on their desktop, switching from, say, Office to a Citrix deployed app to a mainframe app, and you're going through all these things to accomplish something that somebody would have spent quite a bit of time doing manually, but it's just very repetitive. It's not necessarily a lot of dynamic parameters to it. It's just generic. We are seeing between RPA and the work that the SREs are doing with some hand coding stuff, we are seeing the needle tick. However, we still have a long way to go when it comes to completing those tasks. And as we mature in those areas, it will get better and better. But for now, you're not going anywhere. You're going to have a job if you're doing this type of process automation. You're going to have a job for many, many years to come. So don't worry about that. But that's really good that SREs are actually making a difference in the organization. If that's the only thing they did, it'd be wonderful. Here's a problem I see. As we talk about the things that an SRE is involved with, and as I watch these conferences, presentations, and being at KubeCon, talking with the vendors who are providing solutions, there is a focus on the machine, the Kubernetes deployed machine, the becoming the operating system of the cloud, the how do we get things done, how do we write better code faster, how do we get it out there, how do we make sure it's self-healing. These are all great things, but there is a lack of specialization out there around performance, and those skill sets were never formally taught in school. There's no formal education route that you can really take. Most of the stuff that you learn about good performance, like best practices and things that apply to all systems, those are learned from on-the-job experiences, and many times getting your hands dirty and getting your hands slapped a few times and sticking a fork into an electrical socket by accident and finding out that's not a good thing to do. And I think because those skill sets are not standardized, we're going to run into problems when we have nothing but developers that talk to SREs who automate everything, that then talk to operations. And operations and everybody else from operations on to the end user wants everything fast. And then they just roll it back up to the developers to say, but it's not always your code, right? So the specialization, even in the cloud, even between knowing the things that make Azure components run efficiently and fast versus Amazon versus Google Cloud versus Rackspace. Those are individual things that not everybody is going to know everything about. And so from a performance perspective, I think we are losing some of that. So over the next year, anytime I'm asked to talk about anything and I'm told you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, you're really going to be hearing me talk about the need for specialization and the need for standardization when it comes to performance engineering. I really feel strongly about this. So I won't get into a 20-minute spiel on it, but I do want to mention that that is something that I don't know how to fix that problem standalone. I think it's going to need vendor input. It's going to need expert uh, input from people who are well known in the industry, like myself, who have big mouths, who are willing to share, good communication skills, and are willing to document some things and work together if we want to see this continue. Otherwise, I think it's going to continue to be Black Friday to Black Friday, outage here, outage there, and every time Taylor Swift has a new tour, Ticketmaster is going to keep going down. And then when people like myself try to contact these companies and say, we'd love to help you fix this, it's all, we got it because we know everything, because we're doing everything ourselves as reliability engineers, SDETs, and pro developers. And dude, we got it, bro. That's kind of what you get. And then once they experience enough pain and they realize we need this specialist, we need a surgeon to help us come in and understand where the root of the problem is. Sometimes it's not as difficult as they think it is. And it's just having somebody with a set of eyes that looks at things differently. I don't think about the GUI necessarily. I'm thinking at the protocol level. I don't think about the things that a developer would think about when they're trying to run their first test on a piece of functionality. And I think most performance testers and performance engineers would agree with me. We have a different slant on where we come from in trying to make things work efficiently and with the least amount of friction. We just, I think we're losing some of those skill sets. Prove me wrong, give me the feedback, and let me know if you disagree on that. Last takeaway here from this report is the blameless culture. There's actually quite a bit of time, page space in this report that talks about the blameless culture, which is probably why Blameless was involved in this report. But it talks about fundamentally a blameless culture is not what is right. I mean, not who is right, but what is right. And I completely support that type of a culture. Um, the way that we work together in a culture where you're not blaming anybody, but you're just trying to do the right thing and you're trying to make things right, increases productivity and employee satisfaction, knowing that, hey, if I make a mistake, if I'm honestly making the mistake for the right reasons, there's no blame to be put in there. It's we're learning from this. You're not winning and losing, you're winning or learning. And so I do completely support that. That doesn't mean that if you do something stupid and or you did something on purpose, that there's not a penalty for that, and there's probably a hall of shame somewhere that needs to be there. But for the most part, the blameless culture is a great idea, and employees need to have that, and it helps to take care of themselves psychologically as well when they're working, because one of the biggest things we're seeing in the industry is developer and SRE burnout, because as more and more responsibilities have been placed on the developers and SREs as we try to shift everything left, there's a tendency to just get overloaded. And when you get that way, sometimes you get frozen, you get stuck, and you get burnout. And then you have people leaving the industry or just saying, you know what, I can work from wherever anymore. I'm just going to go, over here and start traveling and doing something else. And we'll lose a lot of that mind share, and a lot of it won't be documented at all. And that's a shame. So I fully support that. I don't think that blameless culture is just limited to the SREs or developers either. I think that goes for everybody, and I think that's something that we should be talking a lot more about. Um, I don't have a problem with that being in this report, but it did take up a lot of real estate for it. And while I think most people would agree that type of culture and describing it at a summary level would be good, and this is the environment we need to have as if we're going to be SREs and we're going to work together in this DevOps culture that we're trying to build. It's not really limited to that, and it probably should have been part of a deeper report somewhere else, and probably just maybe highlighted there and then referenced to another report to talk more about more in depth of the site reliability engineer day-to-day work and some of the other struggles and things that have to be overcome other than the culture. But you may disagree with me with that, and that's perfectly fine. So I'd like for you to read the report. I'd like to hear your feedback. You can contact me several different ways. I'm available on the internet. I'm very easy to find. scottmoore.consulting is my website. I also am very active on LinkedIn, social media. Load tester is my handle. You can also email me at help@scottmoore.consulting. If you like this kind of content, please make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. So it lets me know that I'm doing the right thing and should be sharing more type of content with you. And that's what I hope to be doing in the near future, talking about more about SRE, DevOps, observability, and things that traditionally are not just performance testing, load testing. It's not limited to that. And if there are other things that you think I should be talking about, always open to your feedback. What do you think about the SRE report for 2023? Is there anything in there that you got out of it as a performance engineer that I completely missed? Love to hear from you on that. For this episode of the SMC Journal podcast, this is Scott Moore saying, are we not SRE? We are DevOps.